Welcome everyone for joining Masterclass in RISE called Reviewing Your Asset Data for Warm Homes Social Housing Fund. My name is Tiffany and I'm a junior consultant from Turner & Townsend. We're joined today by Dan Li Ming from Turner & Townsend. This is a retrofit information support and expertise event, which is fully funded by the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero and delivered by Turner & Townsend. Now I'll hand over to Dan to start today's presentation.
Thank you very much, Tiff. Welcome everybody to reviewing your asset data for the Warm Homes Social Housing Fund. Just a quick run through of the agenda for today's session, and then we'll get straight into it. So the first thing on the agenda is why do we need data to work? Then having a look at key challenges and how to overcome them. Then looking at practicing steps for reviewing and cleaning your data, and how to think about consolidating multiple data sources into a single system, single source of truth principle. Very important for us when we're analyzing data and wanting to be able to do it well. And then sort of lastly, looking at tools and techniques for rationalizing asset data for better insights. So it's just little things you can do or further tools to explore the use of in your organizations to enable you to better understand and actually useful information out of these large spreadsheets and software platforms that we're working with. Just before we hop into that first point, a few sort of acronyms that might come across in this, some hopefully more familiar when it comes to things like DESNES and DSA, grant recipient, but there's also a couple on there that might not be so familiar to you. So API, that's an application programming interface, and an ETL, extract, transform and load tool. The latter two, if you're not a coding wizard or whatever, don't worry, I'm not a coder either. If you are so inclined and your organization's in a position to be able to explore that kind of thing a little bit more, that little more sort of high level data modeling, those things might be worth looking into in your own time. But I appreciate, we get all sorts of people coming at different levels to these sessions, so about a load of things that are quite data sciencey. So why do we need data to work? Several benefits to having a very good asset data management policy. So you can get sort of those four key benefits that we've sort of broken it down onto there on the screen. So prioritizing investments. So if you have accurate data, you can understand where to strategically sort of put your time, money, and effort into underperforming areas of a project or a program, and it also allows you to identify where data has led to really good outcomes and things have been very successful. Identifying properties as well on there, so that's another big benefit. So in a retrofit context, that's all about having the good asset data that allows you to appropriately identify your most energy efficient and inefficient properties in areas, which makes then picking up projects for schemes like the Social Housing Fund a lot easier. And then I think that kind of speaks for itself. The last two things on there, supporting evidence-based decision making. So that's just it helps you make decisions based on a more confident position, because you feel like you've got a better understanding, the full picture of something, and then building a business case. So it lets you build that business case for why you're retrofitting, what you want to be doing, and which homes and all that and the other. It can underpin sort of a very tangible delivery plan that you can present to stakeholders. So nothing too groundbreaking there, but I think it's stuff that we all kind of intuitively understand. But it is worth highlighting that if you get the data right, it makes life a hell of a lot easier for everything else that you do relating to your funding bids and your retrofit projects. It really is about, as that sort of little box at the bottom says there, it's about having a capability to manage your data that goes kind of beyond just one project cycle, or something that's quite reactive to funding, and having something that can really add significant business and monetary value. So we've covered good data, or why we want to have good data. So what about the poor data? Basically, it's just kind of the opposite, terrible mirror image of the stuff we just spoke about. So if you have poor, mismanaged, inaccurate or incomplete data, you can get a lot of little and big issues cropping up within your project process. So You can miss out on grant opportunities because, without the correct data, you'll have knowledge gaps and you won't be able to identify sort of schemes as effectively, and that can somehow sometimes lead to obvious schemes that would be obvious as a project, to put forward to something like the SHF, not kind of jumping off the page at you. So therefore missing out on grant funding. It can lead to delayed projects because you might need to spend longer recollating data in a more accurate manner. Particularly, this is a classic, thing of when you get out on site and all your EPC data was rubbish, and you've got to resurvey, find new homes, adjust delivery plans. It's frustrating for contractors. It's frustrating for project managers. It's just it's a horrible problem that can afflict your project. Misidentifying eligible properties, so poor data or gaps there can lead to property ID being out of kilter, and then you're spending more or less effort than what is required for the needs and wants of particular properties. And then obstructions to supply chain, as I said there, with it, it's really frustrating for contractors trying to get to work on your scheme, because any of them, if they've made a bunch of decisions based on information you've given them and that information is useless, then all that kind of the materials that they were sort of looking to order and getting their own subcontractors and supply chains in place, the way that they were going to phase their delivery, which teams are going to work on which properties when, it ruins all of that for them, and it means they kind of got to wipe the slate clean, start again in the worst case scenarios. So it's just it makes everything a lot more onerous, basically. So spoken there about contractors and project managers, but ultimately the good data can help kind of every stakeholder in a project by making things clearer and easier to understand. So it's not just going to benefit one person or team, as well as your PM and your contractors. Residents benefit from a smoother process overall, and not having people come out multiple times to properties because they don't understand or have the time or inclination to understand why you keep coming to the house to check things. I've already had 3 people come and check stuff and take notes and surveys. Can you just leave me alone, install it or move on? So it makes your resident engagement a lot easier when your data's not creating tripping you up all the time. And then for senior management team and cabinet members and local authorities, it just means that you're able to that decision making sort of element comes into it. You're able to allow them to make good decisions, be confident in you, your team, the delivery, the project, why you're doing it, and all the rest of it. And that really does feed right up the chain there to DESNZ as well. It's very important from a delivery perspective to be able to reassure them that you said you were going to deliver me this number of homes and I was going to give you this much grant to do it, and you say, yeah, cool, we can do that. Having the good data then means that hopefully you then actually do what you say you're going to do, and do that number of homes, spend that amount of grant. And then DESNZ are very happy with that because it then means that they can, calculate the impact of the scheme and your particular project and where it fits into their, plan for the scheme's objective as a whole. So it just pays dividends really at all levels, right from the resident all the way through up to DESNZ, improving their standard of living and saving carbon, which is ultimately sort of what we all want at the end. So some of those key challenges in data management and how to overcome them. Data fragmentation and disparate systems. So data is often scattered across different systems and formats, and that makes it quite difficult to consolidate and analyze. Data quality and accuracy, I think third one on there. So that's all about sort of ensuring the accuracy and consistency of data. That can be very challenging to get right, particularly when you've got conflicting sources. Regulatory compliance, so you'll have to often keep up with sort of your evolving housing regulations and ensuring compliance with that, and updating your figuring out what's up, what's out of date, and what needs to be updated, where you need to focus those efforts can be time consuming. Technological adaptations, so staying updated with the latest technologies and integrating them into existing systems can be challenging. So if you're an organization that runs off a lot of Excel spreadsheets, that can be quite difficult to move away from that to a more sophisticated system. But ultimately, a more sophisticated system would probably let you deal with some of these other challenges a bit easier. But it's hard to do that, and there's a cost to that as well. Which leads me on to sort of cost management. So managing the costs associated with that data storage and processing, and simply the people in charge of managing that can not be insignificant. Security and privacy as well. So protecting any sensitive data that you've got from breaches and ensuring privacy, a constant concern. Lots of the data that you handle won't be too bad for that, but particularly where resident engagement is concerned, or you've got tenancy records, things like that you might be looking through to kind of verify various bits and bobs. That obviously is a major concern. And then I think lastly on their team expectations as well. So there's different teams within your organization, different people, different stakeholders, whatever you want to call them, might have quite demanding time scales, or demanding requests for different information at different times. So meeting their expectations for what they want from you so that they can do their jobs, that can be quite challenging, especially when you've got a really sort of fragmented system. Some of these sort of solutions or sort of things we can work on to kind of address some of those concerns. Centralized data management. So this is the single source of truth principle. So really having that central data management system can help consolidate data from various sources and improve accessibility. Normally at Rise, we talk about sort of your data modeling software as kind of a good place to start with this, something that can take data from your asset management system or other Excel spreadsheets or wherever else you keep stuff, store it all in one place and be updated regularly, which kind of leads me on to that data governance point, actually establishing that data governance policy to ensure data quality, accuracy and compliance with regulations. So who's in charge of updating what, when something new comes in, what do you do with that information, where do you store it, how do you ensure that everyone's singing off the same hymn sheet? That probably is what I would say the most important thing when it comes to this stuff, because you can have all the fancy tools in the world, but if you haven't got someone that's actually in charge of updating things, it's a waste of money. Advanced technologies, so you could look at getting in bespoke software packages. I think we'll talk as well about very briefly about extract, transform and load tools as well. So if you really want to kind of go into the data sciencey, data modeling stuff, if you're a big Excel nerd, that kind of person, there's a lot you can do with that to try and get different systems to sort of talk to each other and try and reduce the amount of things that need to be manually transformed or manually loaded into different places. Regular audits and updates, we've kind of covered that. Cost optimization as well, so exploring sort of cost-effective data management solutions and optimizing existing resources. So do you have two people collecting the same kind of information? Really, should only one person collect that, or one person be in charge of updating that system? Is it more cost efficient to have one central system or tool to manage this, rather than having, or does this team need something separate, or need their asset management software to do something different? And then it's very difficult to be succinct about it, but basically I'm sure you understand what I'm saying there about making sure that you're not duplicating work, basically, and that between the different teams, when you are collecting things, that you're not double counting things like that, and that can then obviously help make things free up people's time and therefore make a more effective use of your staffing costs, but also then making more effective use of the software that you do decide to purchase or maintain from an IT perspective. I think that's pretty much all of those covered. Practical steps for reviewing and cleaning your data. It's a bit of a quick data governance timeline sort of thing there, quite high level, but really this is sort of the process can be sort of boiled down to just identifying what you need. So that would be influenced by scheme criteria, what factors are important to you, your strategic goals as an organization, sourcing data, collating that data into one place, cleaning it, transforming it, making sure that it's all neat and tidy, that the format's all the same, that sort of thing. Analyzing that data. So that's what happens if we add these measures or group properties like this. Do they kind of all look like a project? Whatever you want to do in terms of actually using that data, that's the time to do it. Funneling that all in to choosing your project at the end. So quality checking, creating that targeting strategy, identifying that group of properties. Does it support my overall strategy as an organization and the aims of the fund? Yeah, cool. Hopefully there we go. We've got our project. So yeah, very high level, but that's kind of the gradually narrowing sort of funnel, I guess. Yeah, asking questions to slowly funnel down and drill down to exactly which homes you're going to retrofit and why. So just before we move on, because I think Tip, will we have the slides available for people after this session? Could just let us know in the chat or something if so, but these are kind of the data governance principles that we aim when we're carrying out that process of collating and collecting information, cleaning it. So yeah, accurate data, we want it to be correct, precise and up to date. That's pretty obvious. Completeness, we want to have no gaps in it. Again, quite obvious. Consistency, so no conflicting information within or between systems and attributes. So if a gas safety cert says that if there's a combi boiler in a house, but an EPC for it says there's the storage heater, you've got to make the call on which one to believe. Probably suggest that the gas safety cert is probably more reliable in that particular hypothetical example. But again, it's just one example of one of those conflicting information cases that you could quite commonly stumble across. Timeliness, so data is created, maintained, and available when required. If you don't maintain it, ultimately within a few years you're back at square one, and it's useless as well. So uniqueness, so where appropriate, there are no duplicates or redundant data elements. Definitely don't want that. That's just going to clog up your ability to kind of see what's going on and possibly lead you down the wrong route. And validity, so that data is authentic, proven to be valid, and derived from good, reliable sources. So again, this is kind of like, I'd trust the gas safety cert more than I would an EPC. I think in most cases there are many more things I trust than whatever's written on an EPC, particularly if it's an old EPC or even just older than 5 years. But there you go. So those are your sort of 6 sort of key data principles to keep in mind as we go. So cleansing that data then, some examples of some of those checks that I've talked about. For example, logic checks. So does a data for a cavity wall home, is it showing on an EPC, for example, that a home is cavity wall, but that particular property is a late Victorian terrace from acquired stock that you got in the city centre? If so, you're thinking that doesn't seem logically right, because that property of that age it's almost certainly not a cavity wall property. They didn't really appear until sort of commonly until sort of the 1920s. And then thinking about some of those consistency checks. So if you're looking at blocks of flats, are there any flats or EPCs for the flat block that just don't match what the others are? You can do the same thing with terraced houses as well. Are they all the same age? Do they have roughly this similar sort of SAP scores? Things like that. Anything that just looks different, notably different to the rest, is usually worth a closer look. Removing duplicates, of course, as well. And then conducting plausibility checks. So sorting for your very low SAP scores. Are those likely to be correct? I think that's very much worth doing. I've done that before and you just find that I've seen properties where there's a property with like a SAP rating of 0.75. That's clearly not right. I don't know what's gone on that EPC or that property, but to come out with a SAP score of less than 1, genuinely quite concerning. Probably should do a welfare check on that property, make sure it's got 4 walls. So anything that just looks just off, and you'll be best placed to do that. Hopefully you know your stock, know your organisation, and hopefully then when something is egregiously out of place, it's normally quite obvious. Good quick examples there of some of the types of ways and checks you can do to sort of apply some of those principles. So in terms of reliable data sources, recent EPCs, the heavy emphasis on recent there. EPCs themselves have a lot of baked in inaccuracies when we're building off reduced data SAP stuff. There's a lot of assumptions made in the modeling. So EPCs are only ever as good as modeling that underpins them. For the basics, they are still a good place to start. Certainly, if they are not recent, then there can be a lot of problems with that, particularly in social housing, where we tend to change more elements of a property more frequently than in private sector. Most private homes won't be re-roofing or changing windows anywhere near as frequently as social homes be on their re-roofing or new doors and windows programs. So checking in with surveyors in your organisation as well. So if you've got any stock condition surveyed stuff, that again, particularly if it's recent, that's normally a good source, particularly because those will be undertaken by surveyors and will probably be flagging up things that an EPC definitely wouldn't. Which is also very important as well, considering that you can't retrofit a home with which is full of structural defects and stuff. Those things would need to be put right normally before insulating a wall or something. Other things there that we've got on there, retrofit assessments. So done by a retrofit assessor. So that kind of super EPC that you have to do as part of PAS 2035. That can be a pretty good, certainly better than an EPC source of information. And if you're really so inclined, got the resource to do it, BIM. So if you're looking at building information modeling or thermal imaging scans, all of that can be an interesting and reliable source of data to confirm and verify. Costings from suppliers on there as well, actually, is I nearly forgot to mention, very handy. Lots of modeling software does have built-in costing figures for you, so you can get a rough idea of how much things might cost, but there's no kind of better quote to make those predictions on than the quotes from your own suppliers. You don't really get much more bespoke than that. So looking at costings from your last project, costings with framework suppliers that you're engaged with, all those sorts of things, very, very useful to have. So verified data then. So what methodology have you taken to verify the data? Have you verified the measures being recommended with a retrofit assessment? So once you've done some of that modeling and analysis, maybe on your retrofit software, or you've just had a look on the EPCs, what are you actually doing to verify that that's what you need to do? So that could be, again, speaking with retrofit coordinators and getting a retrofit assessor out there doing some PAS 2035 surveys, small sample maybe, to sort of verify your thoughts of what you're going to do to a bunch of homes on an estate. Could be comparing with things you've done previously, your own knowledge of the stock. What are you doing there to kind of just ensure that you're not taking what's just been spat back at you at face value? And then other factors, so that come back to sort of our completeness, timeliness, consistency, accuracy, validity, and uniqueness as well. Within RISE, I sort of just want to point out as well for this, we do also offer, I think, a bunch of data support services for SHFs. So those of you that are, hopefully at this point, you've got some idea of, if you've got the cash, what you're going to do. But we do have some resources as well to kind of sense check some of your data assumptions and review your target list of properties. Things like that. If there's any sort of particular data challenges, we're always, looking for ways to evolve and adapt how we can help and what we can offer. So if you do have any particular challenges, please do just contact your support manager, and we can, as I say, we're always looking to help in whatever way we can. within our remit as well. So yeah, and data is one of those things that, yeah, I think is always worth getting a second pair of eyes on. So how to consolidate multiple data sources into a single system. So this particular slide, we'll move through 4 slides, and this diagram will be on there, and you'll see like the little, bit highlighted on green will sort of move through as we kind of go through this process. But this is sort of, yeah, a bit of a flow chart, bit of a process for consolidating multiple data sources into a single source of truth. So the first step in doing this is simply identifying your data sources, mapping out, all the different systems and formats where your asset data is stored. So that could be energy performance certificate information from the EPC register. It could be data from your subcontractors if site surveys have taken place. Maybe you've got other spreadsheet downloads from data management systems and other important project data, funding target totals, yeah, lots of different things that could get lumped into that kind of other spreadsheet downloads sort of category. Most people have several random spreadsheets floating about. And then possibly sensitive residential data, depending on any specificities for your projects, and any sort of contact information, etc. Next step would be data mapping, as I said, so that you've identified them all, and now you sort of start connecting all the dots between them. So which data facets from which sources are you going to be extracting? How are they going to link into your unified structure? You can start to then pick and say, okay, right, well, that's maybe something that we can automate, or collate. We need to have a process for that, or this team doesn't normally talk to that one, so we need to establish a process there. So that's what the mapping is designed to do. We need stuff from here, stuff from here, stuff from here. So how are we going to get to do that? And that's when you sort of move into your extract, data extraction. You could literally just look up on different systems that bit of information, type it in here in a big spreadsheet or whatever, this bit from over here. That can be extremely laborious and frankly not feasible in timeframes, particularly larger organizations where you might be dealing with quite large numbers of properties. So you might want to look at something involving either an API, so an application program interface, or an extract, transform, and load, an ETL tool, which we'll kind of touch on later, I think, as well, when we get to that. But if you're a small organization and you're on a spreadsheet, so maybe you're doing a smaller project, less than 100 homes, there's always, if you've ever done it, looked at trying to learn how to do something new in something like Excel, and you've got to make a bit of that judgment call about, is it going to be more efficient for me to spend the time to work out how to do this the smart IT nerd way, or is it just going to, or is it actually, for the amount of properties I need to do, is it going to be quicker for me just to sit down in 2 hours and, want to shoot yourself, but, just copy it all down manually? But that's kind of the thought process there. So then we get on to trying to get everything into that singular data system. So it should be all in there now, and now we're just looking to transform it. So this is transforming the data into a consistent format, and that might include sort of cleaning, normalizing, standardizing the data. So sorting out the formatting, basically, you paste bits from different spreadsheets into each other. It's that kind of thing. That process of cleaning the data, very, very important for removing errors, duplicates, and inconsistencies, which will quite naturally crop up just from, merging 2 data sets. That just tends to. Then looking at integrating that data into your centralized database. So you could do this using data integration tools, like, your ETL API type things, or some other sort of middleware solution, they call it. So another bit of software that just sort of allows different applications to talk to each other. But yeah, you've kind of got it all in there, this nice cleaned big single spreadsheet type of thing, and then you want to integrate it into your database. And then data validation, so that's validating that consolidated data to ensure accuracy and completeness. So you might cross-check data against original sources, run quality checks, that kind of thing. So okay, right, I've gone through this big sausage machine of data process. What's come out? Okay, let's have a look at this row, this property. It says this information. We should have got that information from this source. Okay, in this source, is it saying that too? Yep, good. It's the sausage machine's working correctly. It's pulling things through. If the two things are different, oh no, I've messed up somewhere. I've somehow mashed up all my data. Disaster. But at least we caught it now. I can go back and try again rather than proceeding on false information. And then lastly, data governance. So establishing data governance policies to maintain data quality, security, and compliance over time. So, this is all sort of, Data Protection Act 2018 GDPR type of business. Particularly pertinent for handling your resident data, your contact information, things like that. If you've got any bits or data fields like that are sort of being integrated into your big database, that might be something that you need to take a look at. And then lastly, on the final step, continuous monitoring and maintenance. So just because you've done it once, I always compare it to a bit like painting the Golden Gate Bridge. So it takes them 7 years, and when they get to the end, they've got to start again. Maintaining your data's that kind of thing. You just got to chip away at it, because if you don't, and you don't keep it up to date and accurate, it becomes irrelevant, and a waste of space, frankly, because it'll start, causing you to make decisions based on very poor information. So always something to monitor, update, and where you can think about improving. So if you've can you automate aspects of that updating process? Can you set something up so that your asset, when somebody changes a field in your asset management software, can it pull through to your energy modeling software? Some energy modeling software providers do have bits that will talk to certain asset management softwares, things like that. So is there something like that that you can implement? And then if certain data pieces change or you need to collect new information, is that automation tool still going to run properly? We've all seen spreadsheets with lovely fancy formulas set up in them. Somebody breaks them and then it's a nightmare. So making sure that things like that are still running properly, and that when you're changing inputs and asking for new outputs, those things in the middle still work as they should. That's that whole monitoring and improvement piece. So tools and techniques then for rationalizing asset data for better insights. So this is the stuff around data integration platforms, data governance software, ETL, and data warehousing solutions. So not going to go into loads of detail on this, because it is sort of a whole other, data modeling science. There's a whole rabbit hole you can go into with this kind of stuff, and aware that depending on how your organization manages data, this might be more or less useful to you. You can't be trying to run before you can walk, sort of thing. So data integration platforms, that's just simply a platform that allows you to bring data together from multiple sources and provide a complete picture of your assets and properties. I guess a little bit like your automation bits that enable different, your asset management software to talk to your energy modeling software, that kind of thing, or like an API. So a bit of software that allows one program to talk to another and pull things through. Data integration platforms that let you merge things together. Data governance software, that's sort of that allows you to sort of create internal data standards and policies on who can access certain elements of your data and how you'll use it, particularly relevant for sensitive data. So that might be something to look into. ETL tools, so this is data extract, transform, and load tool, which sort of copies data over into a specific storage space called a staging area. And then basically in that little box, it then sort of, you tell the software how to format it and things like that, and it will then run those steps, transform the data, format it all neatly into those things, and then it will export that somewhere else. So an example of this would be something like Power Query in Excel. So if you've ever dealt with massive spreadsheets before that, like oh, a laptop can't handle it type of spreadsheets, something like Power Query can be really, really useful, just to kind of cut away loads of data fields that you don't need, and then move this column here, rename this one here, hit run, bang, and then that massive spreadsheet, cut this, boom, rearrange these columns, get it all formatted exactly the way you want it, spit it out, and then you can work with that data a lot more easily. So yeah, that'd be something like Power Query would be a sort of an example like that. I think Power Query can also get different, like connect to different Microsoft data sources as well. So if you've got a SQL database, like an SQL database or asset management software that's kind of based on that, I think it can pull things from that as well. But yeah, as I say, it's a whole other sort of topic. And then lastly, on their data warehousing solutions. So a data warehouse is just another system used for analyzing and reporting on structured and data from different sources. Which for your retrofit projects, could include your retrofit assessments, property heating demand, maybe even tenancy files and previous repair project invoices. So some system that could do that, would be quite useful. I guess energy modeling software probably fits the bill most on that, although I don't know. It probably depends very much on the particular nuances of the software that you're using as to how much other data can be sort of plugged in. When it comes to things like previous repair invoices or tenancy files. But again, something to kind of look into and see what how it might be able to benefit you. So yeah, lots of tools which can get quite complex, and you might not have time, or energy or resource or whatever to learn how to use them and implement them necessarily. But there might also be bits on there that you could actually take away, might be worth time exploring in a bit more detail to kind of unlock. So it's kind of like a bit of a steeper learning curve, some of that stuff. But once you've implemented them, and then it makes maintaining and updating that system so much easier. It's just kind of high level of inertia at the start. I think it really takes a lot of effort to get them going, but once they're going, you can really get benefit out of them. So just a quick word then on selecting software. So when you're selecting software for your organization's asset data needs, you should consider sort of the following functionalities. So the visual platform to appropriately manage your housing data and identify any quality concerns, sense check and skill sets. So thinking about how well does basically how well does it enhance the visibility of all the data that you have? So property level data, mapping data, all the different sort of categories that you've got in there. Thinking about then how well does it streamline everything into one place? Does it match the capability of your team's data management skills? So are you actually going to use it? What you don't want to be doing is end up as the organization with all the gear and no idea, because that's a massive waste of money. So if you are, the more you're investing in the tool, the more you should be investing in your team to be able to use that. And then lastly, sort of that accessibility for effectively modeling the collated data in lieu of your retrofitting objectives. With different tools on the market, they've offered different functionalities. Worth spending some time with each of them, talking to the people who are trying to sell you them, and understanding their functionality, the nuances of them. Some might be better at integrating with particular systems that you have already, and some of them will have different subscription models to each other, which might be more or less cost effective depending on the size of your housing stock portfolio. So yeah, just again, kind of pretty obvious, I suppose there, but what worth when you think about it, but it's pretty simple advice. It's just, does it let you do what you would like it to do? Can you use it? Will it be worth your time learning how to use it? Does it meet your, financial restraints, in terms of subscription models? And how will it help you build towards what you want to do strategically when it comes to retrofit, your other organizational targets? So yeah, some common pitfalls here of when getting software in: underestimating complexity, insufficient of the software, that is, and you can kind of rush the implementation and overlook critical details. Insufficient project planning. So if you haven't got a good plan outlining your project goals and timelines, resource allocation, a process of implementing that new technology can then be very difficult. A lack of a unified vision. So just because you're pretty sure how you want to be using this, if it requires a lot of input from your asset management team and they sit somewhere else, how involved are they with this process? You might need to make sure that they're kind of, again, pulling in the same direction as you, and that they're not kind of blindsided by all this. Ignoring the human aspects, so engaging team members at all levels in that change process over to a new system to reduce resistance and encourage a smoother transition. So maybe looking to have things like particular champions, trainer type things going on there, so you can cascade that knowledge effectively over time. Overlooking data management, so that's kind of processy side of things, and getting people to making sure you've got people in different teams who are able to actually put that stuff forward, update things, input data, run tools to transform things, or whatever it is. Have you got all the different parts running together smoothly? And again, very, very similar there to the kind of neglecting document management. So making sure that everyone knows what they're supposed to be able to access, when they need to access it, and what they're supposed to do with it. So yeah, that whole governance procedure, that's really probably the biggest barrier. So asset data, crucial resource in the electric project. It's worth spending time to make sure that you're actually getting the most out of it. And so, whilst it may seem like a massive pain and take a year or two to, get everything running smoothly, transitioning systems, making sure that strategies are working properly with what you're trying to do and all the rest of it, you want to shift that model, I think, towards something that so ultimately become less reactive to funding waves and more proactive, so you can identify opportunities and take advantage of them better and quicker and have smoother delivery. And quality data is really at the heart of that when it comes to retrofit.
That's great. Thanks very much.
No problem. Yeah, nice work.
Bye.
Bye.